Mine is really not a speech, but one has had to follow the discussions and try in some kind of an integrated way and thematized way to lift some key issues that would help inform the way forward. But it's important to recognize that there is a history that came through in a number of the speeches that were given here today by Minister Davis as well as by Ambassador Paulinho Makaringe. A history that is essentially political. But I want to also say to all of us, one of the things that we must also not fail to recognize is that there's also a very deep economic history. In my first address in Mozambique on South African National Day, one of the things I said was that Mozambicans have been part of the story of South Africa's economic evolution. I said that we worked the mines and factories of South Africa together with Mozambicans. And Mozambican people have been part of South African life for many, 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 many decades. And it's very important that we recognize these anchors of the relationship. It is political, it is economic, it is social, because our peoples have, interacted in various ways. They are related in various ways. They have married one another, but the languages that are spoken, across both borders. So these are also very important, fundamentals that anchor the relationship between South Africa and Mozambique. And my dear brother, Ambassador Makaringe, you set us on a very good path when you reminded us of what President Machel said in 1981, let them come. But you said if he was alive today, he would still be saying the same thing, but to say let them come to do what I think we are trying to do here today, to do business, to deepen the relationship between the two countries. The joint achievements that have been registered between the two countries, I think, were well mentioned. I don't want to repeat all of them, but perhaps just to remind us, of the difference that the N4 corridor made to life and the flow between the two countries. That's something that we continue to benefit from to this day. But the fact that we're able to jointly embark on this project is something that made a very big difference between the two countries, and we have to continue along that path. When Mozambique discovered its very first deposits of gas, which are far smaller than what Mozambique has now discovered, which led to the Sasol. Where's Marina? Are you still here from Sasol? That resulted in the pipeline from Temane, central Mozambique. Oh, you are there. Thank you very much for coming. That pipeline, and which we can say today, we are starting to see some of the benefits as there are projects that are feeding off this pipeline to do things in Mozambique, so that it's not just gas that is flowing from Mozambique to South Africa, but we are beginning to see things being done, feeding off the pipeline to power Mozambique and to begin to supply gas into the residential areas of Mozambique. So these are some of the things that we have achieved together. Mozal was mentioned here, with Mozambique not having even the first ingredient you need to produce aluminium, but today has got a world-class facility. Again, these are things that we have done together. And one of the things that I would like to cite from these two projects is how at the beginning, these projects were run with a lot of foreign skills. But today you go to Mozal and find out who is running that facility. Go to the Sasol Central Processing Facility in central Mozambique, find out who is running that facility. And I've been there physically. It's Mozambicans who have acquired the skills and the experience to actually run these sophisticated facilities. And I think this is something that speaks to what we must aim to achieve. As we do things together, we must look for opportunities to strengthen each other's capacities, to enhance mutual benefit between the two countries. And of course, the issue of trade, which has been mentioned here, which clearly favors South Africa in terms of the trade balance. But the minister spoke here about the need for us to move in a direction that ensures that we can enhance that trade in two ways. Move more towards value-based trade, but also to enhance the levels, to enhance the benefit to Mozambique as well of access to the South African market. So there is a history also of things that we have been able to do together, and I'm going to come back to this particular issue. In terms of what is ongoing and the future from a South African point of view, there is a yearly exhibition that takes place in Mozambique, and South Africa is always a participant with a number of companies to exhibit at FASIM. And at a time when Mozambique was going through a really rough time last year, I can never forget the words of President Nyusi when he came to the South African stand as he was about to leave, because Mozambique was really going through a very, very tough time as a result of what has been talked about here, the impact of the deaths and the meltdown that happened. And he said, as he was about to exit the South African stand, he looked at me and said, "We are together." And for me, that was very powerful because of the context within which it was said. And I think that that has to be the spirit. We have to be together in tough times and in good times. And this has been our message to South African companies. Recently, we had a technical visit exploring opportunities, projects, as we continue to look for things that we can do together. The minister spoke about the review of the MOU, which must also assist us to do more things together. And Mr. Lucas spoke here about some of the work that they did recently at the port. And I just want perhaps to speak at greater length than he did. I participated in the ceremony at the completion of dredging work that was done to enhance, to increase the depth of the Mozambique port in order to enable the port to take larger ships. And I think that recently, for the first time, the port was able to receive a ship, I think that was carrying something in the order of 90,000 tons. But there was something quite important that came out on that day. It was that, yes, it is one thing for us to expand the capacity of this port, but there are other things that have to kick into play. Those were your words on that day. The rail entities on both sides have got to come to the party in order to ensure that this enhanced capacity of the Maputo port, it can ensure that the capacity to utilize that port even by those South African exporters who are based in the sort of northern parts of South Africa, can find it easier to use that port. So these are some of the things that speak to the ongoing work and things that we need to do going forward. Each of the countries has got industrial ambitions. South Africa has got its own industrial ambitions. Mozambique has got its own industrial ambitions. And we have to find one another here. As Mozambique enhances its own industrial capacity and South Africa also does the same, we must ensure that that results in this thing I spoke about earlier on, of ensuring that, you know, the trade that is taking place between the two countries is mutually beneficial, and we increase, you know, the value of the goods that we trade between each other. I want to speak a little bit about the trajectory of Mozambique and new possibilities. Mozambique is emerging as a potential new energy supplier, not to South Africa, but potentially to the region. Mozambique stands today as a country that has the potential to help SADC meet its own energy needs. South Africa, of course, has got huge needs in the area of energy. We need the gas, you know, as we need to convert some of our power stations in order to reduce our carbon footprint. So we need that gas in order to convert those power stations into gas-fired power stations. But currently, gas from Mozambique is powering many South African industries in South Africa. I once got a very frightening, it's not a statistic, but someone said to me, if, you know, you were to shut down the pipeline that currently brings gas from central Mozambique to South Africa, a big portion of South African industry would actually grind to a halt. And so, again, you are seeing there, you know, that there are already synergies that are there between the two countries. But as South Africa will continue being a large and complex economy that we are, to have a high level of demand for gas and for energy, and as Mozambique develops its capacity to supply gas and other forms of energy, because part of the thinking is to ensure that electrical energy is produced in Mozambique for purposes of powering Mozambican industry, but also for export purposes. So this is an area that I see with great possibilities. Mozambique is currently exploiting its own mineral resources, because it does have some mineral resources which the earlier history of the country post-colonialism did not allow the country to exploit those mineral resources. And now that the country, you know, is on that path that the ambassador described here, it is now beginning to be a mining country as well. South Africa, with its own long history and track record in the area of mining, we must be able to find synergies between us. Thirdly, one of the priority areas of the current government in Mozambique, agriculture, is something that will really help the country to deal with the challenges of unemployment, poverty, and so on, and food security. Again, I think that South Africa's own depth in the area of agricultural production is something that provides opportunities for us to find synergies. Tourism. Mozambique is a very attractive tourism destination. You must just see what happens in the borders, you know, during the holiday seasons. It's Easter's, it's Christmas, the traffic. And currently we have a lot of South African investments in the tourism sector. And so there is an area that still presents more opportunities as Mozambique even from the presentation that we got here, seeks to enhance itself as a tourism destination. The presentation by Gazida, I think it elaborated very well on not just Mozambique as an investment destination, but the opportunities that are there in infrastructure, in agro-business and agro-processing, in tourism, in energy, and some of the very specific, the TET Iron and Steel project. We are going to TET next week because there's a major investment conference that is taking place there. I think the president is going to be there personally, and I will also be attending that investment conference. Nacala Airport, as well as the port and the industrial development zone in Nacala. These are places that I've visited. And Nacala Airport is actually a world-class airport. And there's a lot of work that is being done to enhance the port and also to develop the IDZ. And there are many opportunities for South African companies to participate and contribute in this work that is being done. The issue that I really want to speak to as I contribute to the closing of this session is that as South Africa and Mozambique, and I'm sure Madame Luisa Diogo will agree with me here, we have to rediscover the magic of yesteryear, to rediscover that thing that made us to do great things together. Because with all of these opportunities that have been laid out today, all these possibilities, all these new horizons that are opening up, particularly in Mozambique, we need to rediscover that magic that enabled us in years gone by to work more actively, consciously, vigorously to do things together. And so I would like to see a situation where we don't just have a BNC, a binational commission, which is a platform for annual meetings between the heads of state. From that towards active, coordinated work that needs to take place between the two countries. We would like to see those engagements at various levels in between these big meetings that happen on an annual basis. We would like to see the ministerial engagements. We would like to see the departmental engagements. We would like to see the state-owned entities engaging more actively to realize all of these possibilities. I also would like to emphasize the need for us to find the synergies, because there are many synergies that exist that just need to be identified and explored towards enhancing mutual benefit. And I've spoken to some of these in the area of energy and gas and mining. South Africa is now exploring an oceans economy. So there are many areas. Let's identify and find those synergies. Let us also solve problems, because in any relationship there are difficulties that arise. Let's be able, if we are able to engage in the way that I'm suggesting, we'll solve those problems. And this is one of the things I'm going to speak about last as I close. I'm not entitled to speak on behalf of Mozambique, the Mozambican state, or Mozambique Incorporated. But one of the issues that has come up quite a lot today is the issue of what happened in 2016 with the discovery of the loans and what the impact of that was on the country. And as much as I'm not authorized to speak for and on behalf of the government of Mozambique, I think I can say, as the representative of the South African president in Mozambique, that Mozambique has responded correctly to this unfortunate set of circumstances that enveloped the country for most of 2016. I think it has responded correctly. It has followed the correct path in terms of how to deal with what had happened. Secondly, I do believe that on the other side of this, Mozambique will be better for it, because I think very important lessons will be learned from this process, which will ensure that Mozambique does not repeat the same mistakes in the future. I think I can say that Parliament is stronger today for this unfortunate thing that happened, because the issues around parliamentary oversight and Parliament playing its role correctly to deal with a matter like this when it has arisen. And so as much as there has been an audit on the basis that was also demanded by bodies such as the IMF and some of the development partners of Mozambique, but Parliament also took up its own role to conduct its own investigation into this. So I think that's a positive sign. The fact that the audit itself was located in the office of the Prosecutor General, it was led by a Mozambican institution with participation by an international company. So all of these things, I'm sure, Madame Diogo, you do agree with me that there has been a correct response, important lessons will be learned, that Mozambique will be better for what has happened. And I am personally, as someone who lives there, very hopeful that the country will be better for it. The second thing that I'd like to say as I close is that the Mozambican trajectory, which has been spoken about, José gave a very good account of just what the Mozambican trajectory has been, let alone what happened in 2016. And that picture of a high growth economy and an economy with a lot of potential, that picture has not been changed in our view by what happened in 2016. What happened in 2016 was odd, it was an unfortunate thing, but in our view, it does not change the overall picture of the path that Mozambique is on. And so I'd like to give that assurance to South African companies, South African investors who may be starting to ask themselves questions as to whether it is advisable, to consider investing in Mozambique. And this has been our consistent message to all the business delegations and the trade missions. We had one last week that have been coming to Mozambique. Yes, the difficulties, we acknowledge them, but in our view, it does not change the overall picture. You were there last week when we said that same message at the business seminar. Mozambique, South Africa, and SADC. Of course, South Africa stands as the largest economy that powers a lot of investment and trades a lot with the SADC region. And Mozambique is emerging as a country with the potential to help the region to meet its energy needs. We can work together from two angles in terms of capacities that we possess to power the project of continued deepening of integration and growth and development of the SADC region. I want to lift something very, very important that came from the interaction between Christiana and the gentleman from Barclays Africa. You asked a question about Barclays PLC that had decided to, exit Africa. And there's a very important lesson, in my view, to be learned from this. How Africa can use its own capacities to propel its own growth and development. Because Barclays Africa is there, it remains, it will continue, and it will continue to participate in Africa's growth and development. And I think there's a very, very good lesson to be learned from that very story about Barclays PLC, their decision in relation to the African continent. Also, an important issue came up during that interaction, how a giant economy such as South Africa can benefit from a more robust Mozambique. And the issue about softening the borders to free movement of goods, people, trade, investment, tourism, skills. These are all the things that, and I think these are some of the things that in talking about integration, this is exactly the message, Madam Diogo, that you were trying to convey. That these are the things that we want to see more and more, and easier flow in respect of all of these areas. So the participation of the South African financial institutions in the Mozambican growth and development story, I want to just emphasize that point. I'm happy that you are present in Mozambique, and would like to encourage you to continue to participate. Standard Bank, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was a very important part of the dredging project of the Maputo port in order to deepen the port of Maputo. So would like to encourage that. The final point that I'd like to make is this. There is work that is happening in Mozambique to strengthen the legal and regulatory environment. And as the South African ambassador or high commissioner in Mozambique, we experience this on a daily basis, because South African companies come to us, with their heads, hands in their heads, and saying that, hey, we are being, affected by all of these things that are being done. And we have to acknowledge this work that is being done to strengthen the legal and regulatory environment in Mozambique. There are difficulties that arise. There are things that affect South African companies as the country strengthens its legal and regulatory framework. But what is most encouraging for me is that we are always able to engage. We have something in Mozambique that we call the South African Business Forum. We meet on a perhaps quarterly basis, invite all, as the embassy, all the South African companies to come and complain about everything that they want to complain about. And we identify the critical issues that are bothering them, and we are always able to identify and invite relevant authorities within the Mozambican establishment to come and interact with us, and we discuss how we deal with whatever difficulties have arisen in that interaction. So, sir, when you said that the head of customs, when he said here that there were no questions, it means everything is going well. It could mean everything is going well. No, 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 no. They are all very afraid of you, and that is why nobody wanted to ask a question. But I just want to say that, from the point of view of the South African Embassy or the South African High Commission, we are always able to engage. We have engaged with the Customs Authority. We have engaged with the Inspector General. We have engaged with the banks on some of the challenges that emerged last year, were issues around repatriation of forex. And we engaged. And so I want to leave you with that message that there will be difficulties, but we are able to engage, and there's always a willingness on the part of the relevant authorities to engage with us to help in solving problems. So, Mr. David, thank you so much once more for this, and I'm very, very happy that this was as successful as what we have here today. Thank you very much.